I know what it felt like trying to be a man because that's what was expected of me. My mission now is to leave women in a place where they have so much confidence in who they are. They stop shrinking. They speak up. They say no in a diplomatic way, and that elevates them versus shrinking back from it.
Meet Jen Coken, author and executive leadership coach. She trained nearly 10,000 leaders to stop shrinking and start leading. This conversation will rewire how you think about self-doubt, asking for what you want, and leading on your own terms.
Welcome to the Purpose Profit Shift, where real stories about bold shifts illuminate how we can create a new economy. I'm your host, Rachel Bernier-Green, social entrepreneur, activist, and founder of Thrivo Financial Advisory, formerly known as Economic Justice Consortium, a finance consulting firm designed to help purposeful businesses change the world. As we get started today, I want you to think about this question. What if the thing you think is holding you back is actually your biggest advantage? Today's guest has coached nearly 10,000 leaders, including Fortune 1000 CEOs, to stop shrinking and start leading. Jen Coken is an executive leadership coach, recovering stand-up comedian, and author of Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower. She turned the loss of her mother to ovarian cancer into a mission, got laid off 3 times, and built a thriving coaching practice anyway. Jen's here to talk about what it really takes to lead with authority, humor, and zero apologies. Jen, thank you so much for joining us today.
I'm so excited to be here with you because I love your mission and our social impact purposes align. And that's one of the things that attracted me. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course. And since I have had the pleasure of learning more about your business as I researched for this episode and about your social mission, can you share a bit with our listeners just so that we can kind of ground our conversation there?
Absolutely. Well, my background was actually as a grassroots organizer. I started out passing environmental legislation to protect the water and the air quality in New Jersey, and then moved on to working with 600 college campuses across the United States, mobilizing students to both educate them about the issues of hunger and ending homelessness, and then eventually develop something called Project Partnership. Because my question has always been, why aren't the people affected by the problem or impacted by the problem at the table to help solve their own issues? And as I was looking at the landscape of youth serving organizations and those specifically that were focused on hunger and homelessness, it struck me we weren't asking those people impacted what they would prefer. We weren't going out, the students, we were not asking them to go out and talk with the people on the ground who were serving their clientele. And so we began something called Project Partnership, where it was, and it's now mandatory 25, 30 years later. I don't even know how old I am anymore, but 30 years later, that the students must do a community impact survey, which includes both the providers as well as their clients to come up with solutions. Coming up with that back in the early 90s really then shaped the rest of my career. I went to Capitol Hill for about 6 years, then opened my own consulting firm to work with nonprofits to help them think like businesses. How do I articulate my mission and vision in a way that a company is going to understand? And that way I can get the money I need to do what I want. And people would always shy away. That's corporate speak. I mean, yes, and that is the way you're going to get someone's attention. Do you want the money to achieve your mission? Of course, the answer was yes, exactly.
That was brilliant framing of that question.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Like anything, when you're circling how to, you can see, when you're at the 50,000 foot level, you can kind of see what's needed, but how do you then speak about it in a way that the people that you've got to move understand? And I think that is probably, how do you galvanize people? That's probably one of the biggest conundrums to most social impact companies is how am I able to articulate this in a way to get more people interested? So, that career in politics, and I also worked on a variety of campaigns from local, state, federal, ran for office myself, was very active in the Democratic Party in Denver during the first Obama campaign, and actually gavelled a 6,000 person meeting when we were choosing him as our candidate, which was quite interesting. And during that time, I was also coaching people full time as a second job, although I was a volunteer, 30 hours a week. And fast forward, when the last time I was laid off from a job, it just so happened my first book came out the next day called When I Die, Take My Panties. And I thought, it's got to be a message. Maybe the thing I'm supposed to do is educate women about their bodies and ensure, because we
Mm,
knew nothing about ovarian cancer
yeah,
before my mom was diagnosed. Zero. Not the fact that there's no test, the fact that there's 23 types, all those things. And the best thing you can do is educate people. So I went, okay, that must be my mission. That's what I'm here to do. And, 5 months into it, I was reliving my mom's death over and over. And it was
mm,
just too much for me. And by that point, I had left the company I was coaching for and decided to hang out my own shingle and began focusing on women who are in predominantly male saturated industries because that was me. That was my mom. She
yeah,
retired from NASA. My aunt retired from being a math and science textbook editor from McGraw Hill. My cousin was the first statistician of the Navy, female statistician of the Navy. So I come from this long line of women who kind of were the only one in the room. And I know
yes,
what that feels like. And I know what it felt like. This is going to sound weird, but I think you'll get it, like trying to be a man because that's
yeah.
what was expected of me. So how do I keep my
That's what was
femininity?
modeled for as success.
Absolutely. Chop, chop, chop. Get it done. Get it done. Get it done.
Uh-huh.
Versus, no, we're going to collaborate and we're going to communicate. We're going to empower one another and
Yes,
we're going to get things done. Those
yes,
things can coexist. So that has become my mission now is to leave women in a place where they have so much confidence in who they are. They stop shrinking. They speak up. They communicate clearly. They ask for what they want. They say no in a diplomatic way, and that elevates them versus shrinking back from it. So it's been my whole life that I have always been the one, even as a kiddo, like, okay, well, we got to do a bake sale for those people in need and this, that, and the other thing. And I also feel like, honestly, Rachel, that it's part of my the Jewish culture, tikkun olam, repair
absolutely.
the world. That's at least for me, that drives everything of my entire existence is how am I making this moment with you so that we're better coming off of it? Your listeners are better. How do I make the next moment that I might be writing an email, but leave somebody feeling better about
Yes.
themselves than when I left them?
Absolutely. And I love to take a step back before we get more into your career because there was the organizing and political piece of your career, but then you also were involved with stand up for a while. And you said before that you went into stand up comedy because you were in politics. And so, can you talk about kind of what humor unlocks that policy and persuasion don't?
Oh, nobody has a sense of humor in politics. Have you been watching the news lately? We need a sense of humor. It was not necessarily because of politics. It was something I've always as a kid, I wanted to be an actor. I
Oh,
wanted to
okay.
be the triple threat on Broadway, singing, dancing, acting, and I did voice lessons and tap and ballet and the whole thing. And something in high school, I was talking to my mom about this, and she just looked at me. She goes, "That's going to be really hard." And my little pea-sized brain back then went, "Well, I don't want to do anything hard. I'll go into politics.
Oh,
That's a lot easier."
yes. The
Sure.
notoriously easy route.
Yeah, but when I went to college, I graduated high school at 16, started freshman orientation at 16, turned 17 the first day of college. I figured I'd be there a year. I was just there because all my friends were going. I felt left out. And I
Mm,
thought, I'll transfer out to a theater program. And I got bit by the political bug. And
mm,
so while I was in Denver, I happened to be in a course, and it was all about bringing play into everything we did. And part of that play for me was remembering this is something that fuels me, making people laugh, performing. And
yeah.
I declared that I wanted to, do something like that. And there was a woman who was in the course with me that had been on like 3,000 stages, had had an HBO, I didn't know her,
Wow.
had an HBO special. It was like way before, I'm trying to think like 2004 or 5, way before the way social media is now, right? Where people go viral. She's like, "I'll mentor you." Okay. And so she helped me write my first set, some of which I still use to this day. And then I just committed one open mic a week. And I did that for 7 years running. Didn't matter if
Wow.
I was traveling, I would call someplace until the point when I think I was in Florida visiting my folks, and I called the local improv club, comedy club, and I said, "Hey, I'm a comedian from Denver. I'm in town visiting my folks. I'd love to come, and do a set. Do you have any openings for the open mic tonight?" He said, "Actually, this is our student showcase, but we have an HBO comic and our opener just dropped out. Would you like to come do 15 minutes?" I was like, "Sure." Now, I am scared. Believe me, I am really petrified, but I have learned to say yes and
Mm-hmm.
work through the fear. So my folks came, they had all the like retirees from their community
Oh, I
come.
love that.
It was so fun, 15 minutes. And I always ask for notes because I'm always open. So I go to the guy and I said, "You have any notes?" He's like, "Well, you got the look, you got the chops, you have the comedy. Now you just need 15 years." And at the
Hmm.
time, I think I was 42. And I thought to myself, there ain't no way that I'm going to continue performing at 11 o'clock at night with a bunch of boys in their 20s talk about penises and poop. That was not my jam. So I kind of moved over to do some more political type comedy. And then when I got engaged, my ex-husband had two small children, 3 and 6. And he was getting up at 4:30 because he had to be at work by 5:30 because he was a nurse. So I
Okay.
started getting up with him. I'm like, there's no way I'm going to be getting home at 2 a.m. after
Right.
performing and get up with him to spend time with him. So I just hung up my hat. And then I've done a couple performances where I am now back in DC. Mostly I just weave it into my keynotes and I weave it into my coaching because there's times when it's this moment of tension
Yeah.
when you having a difficult conversation or you're making a point and you can feel the room getting tense. When you interject some humor, it kind of, okay, I
Hmm.
can settle in and it causes people to lean in further. So that's how I kind of integrate it now.
Yes, and I, can tell that you did not leave the humor far behind because I find the title of your first book to be hilarious. And for our listeners, again, the title of the first book is When I Die, Take My Panties. And you said it came from something your mother said. So can you talk a little bit more about the title of that book?
Yes. So my mother, God rest her soul, she was gorgeous, always made up. Like, didn't leave the house without the eyebrows, the lips, always had hats, like, everything matched, right? She was like a walking out of the cover model, kinda hard to live up to when your mom's that stunning. And so, I don't even know when it was, but she introduced me to hanky pankies, the most comfortable thong underwear for anybody that doesn't know. And if you're a gentleman and know a woman, you should buy some for her. And turned me onto those. And then when it was about a month before she was going to pass, and I was visiting her, she's very practical too. She was a scientist. So she's walking me through all the things she wants me to have, like this jewelry, this purse, it's a hobo purse. This is really expensive. I got it on consignment. She's a good shopper. That your grandfather made this fur because my grandfather was a furrier, make sure to take this, da da da. And then she pulls open this drawer and she goes, "And when I die, I want you to take my panties because Goodwill won't take them. And they're in really good shape and you shouldn't throw them away." So she had ovarian cancer, wasn't able to wear them.
Mm.
And so I did. And when one pair would wear out, I would take the next pair. And that wasn't the original title of the book.
Oh,
So
really?
originally, yeah, when I didn't know I was going to write a book. I mean, in my book, I talk about how I realized my whole life was preparing me for being with my mother. She was diagnosed stage 4 and was told she had an 18% chance of living 5 years. And she lived
Mm,
5 years, 1 month, and 8 days.
mm,
She we started visualizing her 70th birthday. She made it to 70. She just did not make it to 71, you know? That last week when we were together, ovarian cancer, if you think about when a woman's pregnant, her womb expands, right? And then you have to
mhm,
go to the bathroom more and all that stuff because it's pushing against your vital organs. Same thing happens with ovarian cancer, except it's a tumor. And so the ways that women would know is if you have all 4 things, you're bloated, who isn't every month, you have problems eating, you're full quickly, or don't have an appetite, you have abdominal pain or lower back pain, and you have trouble going to the bathroom, trouble urinating. And if you have all 4 of those at once, go to your gynecologist, your OBGYN, and say, "Prove to me I don't have it." Not your PCP, not your primary care physician. Go to your OBGYN and say, "Prove it." They've got to biopsy tissue. That's the only way they can detect it.
Thank you for
And
spelling that
so,
out so clearly.
yeah, I think of beat like you beat on a drum, bloating, eating, abdominal trouble. So that's what I always used to educate women with. My mom looked like she was 9 months pregnant, but it was the
Mm,
tumor. So it was even pushing against her lungs, so she had to recline in a chair to take deep breaths. So I had taken her to see some friends for lunch, and she was getting in the car. Such an independent woman, goes to put her seatbelt on. I'm trying to help her. "Don't help me," and she finally gets it in, and she kinda sighs, and she said, "Well, I've had a beautiful life. I hope I have a beautiful death."
mm,
Like, I, took a deep breath, and it was so hard, but I was there for her. It wasn't about me. I was there for her. Plane ride home, I began thinking about this, and as I said, I'm Jewish, but I went to church on Sunday. There's a unity church that's kind of
mhm,
non-denominational, Christ consciousness, love, and I needed some support. I needed some
yeah,
meditation. I needed to be held. So I went there for the service, and in Colorado, there's a series of restaurants called Village Inns, and they have sky-high pie. And my favorite pie is lemon meringue, and it comes with this, like, meringue. It's like a foot high. So I took myself to Village Inn for a piece of pie, and I wrote the first chapter sitting
mm,
there. And I called my mom, and I said, "Mom, your life made a difference." Because what her life was about was she was leveraging her background was in education. She had a PhD in educational statistics, and she was leveraging the space program through NASA to engage with inner city school teachers to get more kids in the inner city schools to be interested in math and science and STEM
wow,
learning. So her whole life was about making a difference with children and making a difference with others. And I said, I want your death to make a difference too. We've got to figure out a way to give away our experience, what we learned. So that was the title. And I go to this book conference, and part of the book conference is a meeting with publishers and editors and things like that. And I have a meeting with an editor, and it's a group meeting. And her biggest coaching to me was nobody wants to read another misery memoir. I would not call it that.
mm,
And you're a stand up comedian. You have to find the humor in this. Okay. So I go back to lunch with my two friends I was at the conference with, and I told them what she said. And like, how are you doing about that? And I said, well, she's got me thinking. And then I remembered what my mom said. So I found her at the conference, and I said, I changed the title to this. She looked at me. She goes, no one has ever taken my coaching that quickly. I go, well, that's who I
that's
am.
me.
Thank you.
Mhm,
Exactly. Now it's a screenplay that we're shopping around looking for. I have a producer. We're looking for a director, a couple people interested because,
that's
and that
phenomenal.
screenplay is not a misery screenplay. It's about aging authentically because that's who my mother was. She was teaching
Yeah,
tap up until the week before she died at her
really?
retirement community. So it's like a quirky, feel good indie film, and at the end, there's a reveal that she's dying and will partner with one of the national ovarian cancer groups and say, "For more information, you can get it here." So it is a lifelong mission for me to educate women about this, and we will get to more women. I know of at least 3 women whose lives were saved after hearing me speak on that first book.
And how does that sit with you as you have carved out this space to carry your mother's legacy forward and to know that other people's lives may have been saved, have definitely been altered because you are keeping this at the forefront of your work. How does that kind of make you feel?
It's not enough. It's like,
Mm,
"Okay, 1, got it. How many women are diagnosed every year?" There's babies that are born with ovarian cancer in utero because they get it in utero. That
I
yeah,
had no idea that was even a possibility.
it's a possibility. I met with young girls who were 19 that had had what they call debulking surgery, where basically they remove most of their major organs. And the thing they said to
Mm,
me is, at what point on a first date do I tell the person I can't have children? After I
mm.
fall in love with them or before? And all I keep thinking is, I don't want a young woman facing this. I don't want women because the average age is about 66. My mother was 66 when she was diagnosed. So, but they're still young, et cetera. And there's a lot of research dollars going in there, but we still need the opportunity or must take the opportunity to educate more people. And it's kind of like that. You've probably heard the story about the starfish where the little kid is trying to save so
No.
now the analogy or story fable goes, there's a guy running down the beach and he runs every morning and he notices a couple starfish and hops over them. And as he continues to run, they're getting more and more frequent. And he finally stops and he looks up and the entire beach is littered with starfish. And he sees this tiny figure way, way, way up the beach. And he picks his way over to the figure and it's this little boy picking up a starfish and throwing it back in the ocean. And the man says to him, "That's not going to make any difference. Look at the beach. It is littered with starfish." And the kid looks at him and goes, "It will for this one."
Hmm.
And so that's what I always think about. How am I making a difference for this person right
Yeah.
in front of me? Do I always achieve that? No. I'm a idiot sometimes too. We all are, but it makes me, how does it make me feel? It makes me happy to know that made a difference for these women. I had breast cancer during COVID, and I turned the whole
Oh,
thing into
wow.
a check your chest campaign because mammograms were 40% down. And I found my
Mm.
lump through a self mammogram, not a mammogram, a
Self-exam.
self exam.
Yeah.
It's always been about how is what I'm up to going to make a difference for others. That's always been my lens.
Yeah, and it seems like you are making a difference both with the work that you're doing to spread the word about ovarian cancer, and I'm wishing you the best of luck with shopping that screenplay, and
Thank you.
also, with the work that you are doing with women in leadership and working with women who feel like they are, square pegs and round holes, and that they are whittling away their edges to try to fit in. Can you tell me a little bit more about maybe when you've had to do that whittling yourself and kind of what it did to you and what made you hone in on this specific area? And I imagine some of it had to do with all the brilliant women in your life who were one of the onlys in certain spaces in their
Yeah,
experiences.
it definitely did, and also had to do with what a crap manager I used to be. My favorite phrase back in the day was, "If you can't hack it, get your jacket. I'll find someone who can."
Oh, no.
Let's all throw up in our mouths a little bit because when I was in my master's program, I was the only female in my master's program in political campaign management. And I would have to fight to have my say. I had one friend who was an ally that would, I just observe, 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 observe. And Scott would turn to me and say, "Well, Jen, what do you think?" And I'd say something. And I use Clifton Strengths as as my main assessment when I'm working with teams and culture. And one of my top strengths is something called strategic, where I can hear patterns and data.
Hmm.
I never knew how to articulate that, but I can land the plane. I can be in a contentious, I used to be one of my former jobs, even though I was the CEO, I was also the environmental justice organizer working with the Navajo Nation, working on and other regional groups, working to stop some coal-fired power plants from being built. And I could be in these contentious rooms listening to people get really heated. And I go, "Can I say what I think I'm hearing everyone say?" And I would say it and people would look at me incredulous and I could never articulate that. So, I unfortunately learned to be directive, rude, cut people off because I was surrounded by men. And I'm 61. So back in the day when I was coming up, you know, skirts, not pants, hose, closed toed shoes, and you could not take off your jacket as a female in the workplace, very distinct from what it is now. And unfortunately, I didn't have any female role models
Mm.
that I could point to that had retained or maintained their femininity while
Yes,
leading. And I think a lot of it has to do with the patriarchal construct and the institutionalization of misogyny,
absolutely.
racism, sexism, all those things. And what I see happen is women are contorting themselves. I was contorting myself to try to fit some mold that either was in my mind or I thought others had. And when I finally was able to identify that, I said to myself, "Well, you don't feel so good when you're doing things this way. What happens if you start being yourself?" And the more I was
Mm.
myself, the more I softened my edges, the more I was collaborative. I could still say things in a very direct but kind way. Instead of saying, "If you can't hack it, get your jacket," I would say, "Talk to me about why this isn't a fit for you right now. Talk to me about what the issues are. Let's see if we can solve them. But I need
Right.
you to ask yourself the question, is this job the right fit for you? Or did you take it because you needed a job? Or have you outgrown it? Do you think your skills would be better?" And then I became curious and we could engage in a dialogue. And I think all too often with the women I see, they think they aren't allowed to say no. We have learned that, oh, we have to prove ourselves, that we have to pick
Yes.
up the work for everybody else. And then we're seen as the fixer and we're too good in that position. We don't want to elevate you because we really need you here. And that's
Yes.
on us. And so recently I did a poll on LinkedIn where I said, what do you think is the biggest barrier to your next promotion or leadership move? You, them, or something else. 90% of the respondents said them.
Hmm.
Blew my mind. I'm like, so now what's happening is this construct that we're operating inside us is causing us to doubt ourselves. This is where imposter syndrome comes in. Imposter syndrome is a moment of growth. It's your amygdala trying to keep you safe. You get promoted and nobody provides you the training for that new job, or you get one day of training and then you're thrown into the mix. This is on companies to shift culture, to
Yes.
have benches, people ready to be part of that succession plan to develop their leaders with the right tools and coaching and that kind of thing. And unfortunately, most companies don't have their eyes on that.
That is so true. And one of the things I found really interesting, you just brought up imposter syndrome, is that you before have argued that the label of imposter syndrome can actually stop growth instead of start it. So can you unpack that for us and kind of what we should be doing instead of labeling it?
Yeah. So number one, it's not a syndrome. That's a syndrome is a medically diagnosed condition. Imposter syndrome is not a syndrome. It's great SEO. And the women who named it called it imposter phenomenon. So it's
Oh, interesting.
phenomenological, meaning it's an as lived experience. So what's happening in that moment, the brain has 60 to 80,000 plus thoughts a day. 85% are negative. 95% are repetitive. And we have to commit, I always say, a conscious act of rebellion against our own
Yes.
brain patterns to interrupt that and show up embodying the kind of leader we want to be. So, what I tell people is if you're having those thoughts, what's the growth edge? Because the only reason that's happening is the brain is scanning the horizon for danger. It used to be physical danger, now it's psychological danger.
Yeah.
And the brain never deals with reality. It's consistently comparing and contrasting. And is this like the other thing? What happened then, et cetera? And I came up with this theory in 2019 when I observed it in myself and then worked with my coach to uncover one of my defining moments where I put one of my flavors of imposter phenomenon together. And it happened to be among my peers where I was laughed at on the playground.
Hmm.
And when I don't have a problem speaking, et cetera. When I'm speaking to authority, I will stand up to somebody. I've testified at the White House, all that kind of, I've been on MSNBC, I've been on, that doesn't bother me. But you get me up in front of a group of my peers, it is so nerve wracking for me. In fact, I was giving a keynote 2 years ago, and thank God I did this work and I was co facilitating. And something happened where I heard all the degrees and stuff after her name and all the things she
Mhm.
did, and I noticed I sat down. When I was speaking, she was standing. When she went to speak, I sat down and kind of caved my shoulders in.
Oh, wow.
She got to a point in hers where she and I were gonna do an exercise, and I said, "Hannah," I said, "This is a perfect spot for the exercise." She goes, "Yeah." I go, "I'm dealing with imposter phenomenon right now." She's like, "What's going on?" And we unpacked it in front of everybody because I was in front of 300 of my peers. It was other women business owners. So if when you are experiencing feeling like a fraud, or you feel like, "I don't know enough," or "I'm not sure if I should put my hand up," number one, check in on the body sensations you're having, because that's
Yes.
really important. Not everybody can remember their memories, but people remember, maybe you have a tightening of your shoulders or you feel like you got punched in the gut. Mine is I push back, almost like I'm
Hmm.
disengaging. Because when my situation happened, I was so embarrassed. I liked a boy and I went to kiss him and he went, ew. And the entire playground in my little brain, my 6-year-old brain, saw me and I just wanted to disappear. So I shrank, right? And so I became funny to make
Mm.
up for it. Yeah, exactly, which is one of my superpowers, is
Yeah.
bringing humor to things. And so when a situation like this happens, notice the body sensations, the thoughts, the mood, and then ask yourself, okay, let me take the case. This reminds me of an earlier similar situation. What was that? And keep
Yes.
asking yourself until you go back to your childhood. And what I found as I was testing this on my clients and working with them is it always go back to some memory before the age of 12, like 12, 14. And it's either your relationship to authority or your relationship to belonging is where I found it. And if we can simply embrace, okay, I feel like this because I'm growing,
Yeah.
then we stand a chance. If the way we continue to talk about them, not if, and as we continue to talk about imposter syndrome as something bad, when it occurs for people or bosses tell people they have it, which I cannot stand, then all of a sudden we're comparing it to this thing that's terrible. If we're able to
Hmm.
flip that and say, wait a minute, it's a moment of growth. How am I growing right here? Or what am I what am I afraid of? What am I afraid might happen? Because it's really fear-based at the end of the day.
Very much so. And two things that are coming up for me listening to this is one, how much I appreciate your vulnerability in that moment when you were in front of hundreds of your peers to tell your co presenter, hey, this is what I'm actually dealing with and working through that on stage. And when we talk about legacy and changing things for one person at a time, that's something that you don't really know how many lives were impacted because you chose to be vulnerable and have that conversation.
Yeah,
And so I just commend you for that because so
thank you.
many of us are struggle with ego to the point that we can't be vulnerable in front of people that way. And it really can be an impediment to learning. And especially when we're talking about systemic barriers. So there are a lot of other people who have faced them that when we are able to move beyond that and really share things in a transparent way, that really can start to shift paradigms.
Yep. I think that's really key, and I think we think vulnerability is bad because look at the definition of it, you're leaving yourself exposed.
Right.
However, if I can, and having been trained so intently by this international coaching company that I used to work for, I had trained myself to be able to share really difficult stuff because I had moved through it and gotten the coaching I needed to be able to own my story,
Yes.
to be the author of my journey. And the root word of author, authenticity, and authority, AUTH, is the Greek word for self.
Mm,
So when we can be the author of our own journey, that is authenticity. That is authentic leadership. If you're searching the web, you're looking in the wrong direction. There's like 132 impressions of what an authentic leader is. You got to dig inside. And when we're authentically in our own skin, going back to square pegs, round holes, when we feel true to ourselves, then we command authority. And authority for me isn't about power. How much confidence do I have to be who I truly am
mhm.
without wearing the masks? And I often tell people, well, I can't talk about private things at work. Don't talk about private things, but you can talk about personal
Yes.
stuff. Well, what's the difference? Well, I could say I'm having a tough time because I'm going through the divorce. I don't have to reveal that my ex-husband literally walked out, got in his truck, and went back to his first wife, and
Oof.
everything that ensued from there. That there's too much detail. But when your manager knows, or you're able to be real with your team, I'm going through a tough time. My husband and I are getting a divorce. Everybody knows that's a tough time and they have more compassion. And then all of a
Yes.
sudden, okay, it's okay to talk about this stuff at work. And I think in this day and age, especially, we need to have more empathy and compassion for what people are going through
Absolutely.
because we don't know how the current state of affairs is affecting people's family, extended family, their psyche. We can't tell from
Mhm.
the outside. People can look great, buttoned up, the whole thing, and be a bowl of mush on the
Yes.
inside.
Yeah, and that's such an important thing, I think, for leaders to take away from this conversation that modeling this behavior is so crucial because you can tell people that they are free to be their whole selves or bring their whole selves to work. But until you bring your whole self to work to show people that it is actually a safe place to do so and that it is okay, they're not going to open up. And that this is one of the reasons why when we see some data that shows that
companies that are led by women who are embracing their femininity and how they lead and are embracing this vulnerability and this transparency, this is one of the reasons it makes a difference. Because
Yeah.
when people don't have to mask when they show up to work and they can bring their entire selves to work, it makes a difference for productivity. It makes a difference for retention. So there are real business benefits that I
Yeah.
feel like we culturally for decades just were dismissing because
Yeah.
those benefits were not being borne by the dominant model of leadership.
Yeah. Absolutely. It increases employee engagement, increases employee satisfaction. And I
Yeah.
think something you said was so important. You can't expect others to bring that until you do. As a leader, you've got to be the one to go first. You've
Yes.
got to be the one to say the hard thing. One of the jobs I was laid off from, one of my favorite jobs, I worked for a group called the National Parks Conservation Association. And I was given 47, I think, business plans, very dry business plans from like Stanford and Harvard, et cetera, of all the national parks showing the parks needed more money. And my job was to take that and turn it into a major national campaign to increase national park funding. And I'm happy to say we eventually did that after I left, but we put all the wheels in motion. And the organization, our grant funding ran out. I mean, the funder was just silly because they didn't see results in 2 years. They got the results 4 years later. And we
Hmm.
put everything in place, and I thought it was very what's the word? It was too early for them to pull out, but
Yeah.
they did.
A short-sighted decision.
Yeah, exactly, short-sighted decision, and so that meant that my job was eliminated, and we had a big staff meeting to announce that my job was gone, all these other jobs, and people were shocked because we were making such a difference and moving things forward, and people were on the phone. It's a national group, so people were on the
Yeah.
phone and all this stuff, and people started getting really heated, and I was like, "Wait, wait, wait." I asked my boss, I said, "Can I say something?" He was like, "Yeah." I go, "Everyone." I said, "I understand this is coming as a shock. It came as a shock to me too. It's not what I was expecting. It's not what I wanted. I
Yeah.
would love to continue to work here. This is the reality of the situation. And if we start bemoaning our situation, if we start belittling the work that we've done, then we are taking away from all the good that we've done. Don't let
Right.
your emotions get the best of you. Remember the difference we're making." I mean, there was instances where pieces of the visitor center fell on somebody and they had to get the first aid kit out. Yes, to help
Oh,
the person with
no.
their wound. Yeah, it was just dumb stuff like that because
Yeah.
there was all these backlog of maintenance projects, right?
Yeah.
And so my boss came up to me and said, "You are always diplomatic and gracious up until the end, even with facing something like this." The last job I was laid off at, half my team was laid off. I was the first one to go at 8 AM, and I said to my boss, I said, "Who else are you laying off?" And he told me, he said, "Number 1, I have to stay to complete a few things because I am always of the opinion you organize yourself out of a job. You make sure that somebody else, if I got sick, somebody needs to have the playbook to be able to,
Yes.
God forbid, And I said, "Number 2, I would like to give him the news." And he was like, "Only you." Because
Hmm.
I've been able to consistently, for the most part, not 100% at all, because I have my
Yeah.
moments and I can be a real jerk sometimes, believe you me.
We're human.
Yeah, we're human, exactly, but I have consistently tried to not how Michelle Obama used to say, "They go low, we go high." I mean, sometimes you
Hmm.
gotta be like, "Boom, we're going low because you deserve it." However, in these moments, I try to go high and remember,
Yeah.
this is not about me. This is about where the organization's going and what needs to happen. We're a team. We came in as a team. I hired everybody. I built this team. We're gonna go out as a team, and at the end of the day, everybody, the people that were laid off and the people that weren't, I took them all out for drinks and apps at happy hour.
Yeah. That is really such a shining example of servant leadership.
Absolutely. Like you said, when our ego gets in the way, that's yeah.
That's when we start getting in trouble.
Uh-huh. Your ego will get you in trouble every time.
Yes, that's so true.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is coming up for me, it reminds me of something else that you said, that your mission is to have a world of people at home with themselves. And this, like your behavior in that situation, that seems to me like an example of someone who's at home with themselves because your identity is not tied to the job, which makes it a lot easier
to have those difficult conversations, to accept that you are being let go, to be diplomatic about it, and then to stand in the gap and
Yeah.
deliver that hard news to other people. But can you talk more about what being at home with yourself looks like in high pressure roles?
Well, let me also share where it came from because it was a particular phenomenon called 9/11.
Hmm.
So I used to do these charity bike rides. I was living in DC and we would do 330 miles from North Carolina to DC to raise money for local organizations who were taking care of people with HIV and AIDS. And they had two, what we called the AIDS vaccine rides, where we were raising money and bringing attention to the CDC in Atlanta, who was actively looking for a cure for HIV.
Hmm.
And so we had a bike ride from Montreal to Portland, Maine, 550 miles over 7 days. We arrived September 9th. We had a day off September 10th, and we're getting ready to leave September 11th, and we're not going anywhere.
No.
And at the time, I was leading a big seminar to about 150 people. I'm living in DC. I drive past the Pentagon every day to get to where I need to go. And I was supposed to be leading a session of that seminar on September 12th. I couldn't get back. And so another person stepped in and was, I would say, probably very nervous about doing this and
Yeah.
didn't trust himself and might have been, I mean, it was a weird time, shook up himself. He just tried to lead the content of that session. He did not create space for people to share, be safe, anything like that. So people walked out of there angry. So when I got back,
Mm.
my coach said to me, like, what you gonna do? In so many words, like,
How are
what
you
are
going to
you gonna
clean this
do?
up?
And I said, I said, David, I've been thinking a lot about this. And for somebody to go to the extreme of sacrificing themselves in service of a cause they believe in, whether I agree with what they did or that cause doesn't matter, to actually give their life to that, all I keep coming to is they didn't feel like anybody was listening to them. They didn't feel
Mm.
heard. And unfortunately, we're listening now and not in a good way. And
Yeah.
I said, I've been thinking a lot about what would it be like if we didn't see differences anymore, that we were so at home with ourselves that we could see and know and honor others for their unique gifts and contribution. And so that is where I designed my vision was 25 years ago, a world of people at home with themselves where each and every person is known, honored, and honored for their unique contribution, known, honored, and
Yeah.
appreciated for their unique contribution. And that has led me to do things as a leader. How do I take care of the neurodiverse in this meeting? Let's write things down and put it up for those introverts that I might have in a meeting. When
Hmm.
somebody gets upset, while I may react initially, I'm going to try to figure out where they're coming from, what's behind that. I get curious. That
Curiosity goes a long way because
it
there
does.
so often tension comes from when people's needs are not being met in a variety of ways. And
Yeah.
what you just said reminded me of a quote by Dr. King about riots being the voice of the unheard.
Oh,
And when we continually, are not listening to people. And I do think it's important that we see people's differences and embrace those differences because we'll never be, a monolithic whole, but that we are not allowing those differences to be an impediment, that we are still, able to listen to people because I absolutely agree with you. Even when I, you know, don't believe with someone's even when I don't believe or endorse someone's actions, I can still understand what led them to that place.
yeah. And I think what I often say is, are to people, are you coming to conclusion? Am I coming to a conclusion right now or am I staying curious?
Hmm,
Am I staying open? And I
good
think
question.
being able to when we're coming to conclusions, it's because we have perceptions. Remember, the brain's never dealing with reality. Then we're coming from our perceptions about what? Ourselves, others, the situation. There's only three types of perceptions. Perceptions about me, perceptions about you, perceptions I have about being on podcasts, if I had perceptions about that.
Yeah.
And so check your perceptions first. Assume you
Yes.
have them. And this often shows up when women feel spoken over, when they feel interrupted, all those kinds of things that could darn well be happening. We got to
Yes.
remember men were trained by the patriarchy as much as we were,
Yes.
right? And so we need to retrain our brains, all of us collectively. And so
Yes.
let's give people the benefit of the doubt. I often say to my client, so and so did this and la, 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 and they did that. And I'm like, how do you know? Well, I mean, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, did they say that they were going to do that? Did they actually do that? Or are you just presuming? I'm presuming. Presumptions, perceptions, what do those lead to? Conclusions. Okay, if you were to put aside your conclusion, what could you get curious about? And then I
Yes.
say to them, you can't say things like, tell me, I'm so curious why you're such a jerk. No, you can't say things like that. I'm just, I'm curious what led you to say that. I'm curious what led to that conclusion. I'm curious during that meeting, I was speaking and you interjected in a way that I couldn't finish my idea and actually didn't have the time because you took up that time. I'm just curious why you felt that was more important than me finishing. This is
Mm,
interesting because I was giving a presentation with another woman at an HR conference in Dallas. And the guy that came after us, old white guy, okay? I'm an older white lady. My friend's a middle aged white lady, okay? And, the guy that came after us made some derogatory comments about, and our whole thing was about curiosity
mhm,
and stay curious and what that would look like, and he made some derogatory comment toward us that what he had to say was more important.
mm,
And then there was a woman who was keeping time, and she gave him the 5-minute well, I have way more to talk about than these 2 did. My stuff's way more right? And so many women came up to me. I was like, "Oh my god, what a jerk." We're all saying that. "Ah, what a jerk, what a jerk, what a jerk." Well, he and I had a call this week. Now, mind you, this is a month before. So I've processed my emotions, you know.
mhm,
I'm gonna assume best intent. I'm gonna get curious about this guy. He has a book coming out, because I wrote to him and said, "Anything I can provide, love to." So we got on the phone and he said he was giving a keynote the following week. So would it be okay if I gave you 3 bits of coaching about your keynote? He was like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah." I said, "Well, number 1, your slides are too busy. I was trying to read your slides and focus on what you said. Keep your slides simple. You had beautiful graphics. Take the writing off so that people focus on you." "Oh, good idea, good." He's writing it down. And I said, "Number 2, I don't think you intended this. Always assume best intent. I do not think you intended this, but this happened." And he was horrified. He
mm,
felt terrible. And I said, "I know your heart," because I could tell, when you just can tell,
yeah,
like, the energy, like, I can tell your heart. You had no intention of doing that. When you're talking about another speaker, always make sure you're elevating them. If you're comparing, you're elevating, you're not denigrating.
yeah,
And then I said the thing about the timekeeper. He goes, "Well, there was no way," and he wrote down the thing I said, and then the timekeeper said, "There's no way I could end in 5 minutes." I said, "You have to learn how." So I was giving a keynote to 1,000 people. I had an hour, and I was told I had 35 minutes, and I did it. I delivered the goods in 35 minutes.
yeah,
Why? I said, "Whenever you get ready to give a keynote, say it in the mirror 3 times." This guy's a musician, I'm a musician. I was like, "Practice, practice, practice, wail."
yes,
You gotta be able to go with the flow. Don't ever say no to a timekeeper because that conference organizer is not gonna wanna work with you again.
yes,
And he then posted the nicest thing about me. I wasn't, it's not like I was going for a kudos or anything. The
yeah,
nicest, kindest post about me. I was not expecting that. I was like, gosh, this is what it's like when you own your emotions, you own your upset, you take the case,
yes,
it's not them, it's you, and then you figure out a way to make a difference with somebody to elevate them. That's an example of curiosity. And I was very proud of myself too that I didn't,
as you should be.
yeah, I didn't get snarky about it. Because I could have
Yeah,
gotten arrogant and snarky about it, like, "Well, you," ba,
and that
ba.
would be so easy to do.
So easy to do and so justified, especially with all the righteous indignation from the other women in the room. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, the piling on, I'm sure did not.
Mm. We call those women our friends when we go out for wine with them, but they are not your friends to pile on. Get yourself a coach, someone like you, to be able to speak to about these situations.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of the things that you, have said a couple of times that reminded me of my one of my favorite coaches was that our brains don't deal in reality, they deal in perception, and
Yeah.
she had me do an exercise once called Facts Are Friendly, And as we had uncovered these thought patterns, because you also alluded to the fact that most of the things the brain thinks are repetitive and
Yeah.
most of them are negative. And so we got to the bottom of what these negative recurring thoughts were for me and the memories, like you said, that we uncovered that were at the basis of them. And then asked the question, what is the story I'm telling myself about that situation? And what are facts in my life, not feelings, not perceptions, but facts in my life that directly contradict the negative story I am telling myself about this
Oh,
moment.
love that.
And so I have a huge poster board in my office where I now keep all of those foundational moments
Mm,
when they occurred and what the facts are about them. Because we have to, like you said, when we are trying to intentionally retrain our brains, if it took you decades to establish these patterns of behavior, it doesn't necessarily mean it will take you decades to unpack them, but it will take
right.
intention.
It's not one and done either. People think, "Oh, I figured it out. I'm fine." I'm like, "No." And you have to intentionally unpack facts over feelings, and I love what you did there, which is, what's the story I'm telling myself about that, and what are the facts that negate that story? That's
Yeah.
beautiful.
Yeah, it was such a brilliant exercise that I recommend to everyone listening. If you are thinking about those foundational moments, and as Jen said, if you get back to what those kind of core experiences were or memories were, I would encourage you to do that exercise. Uh, and this is not hyperbole. It was life changing
Yeah.
for me to do that exercise, and something that I will, continue to do in the future. And that's why I didn't just, write it on a notepad and toss it away somewhere. That I needed to keep that visible in my space.
Yeah, it's amazing because once you see that, you can't unsee it.
Right.
It's like that, like, oh my god, like tumblers in a lock.
Hmm. Exactly.
Everything makes sense, you know? So my story I told myself in that moment when I kissed the boy and he went, "Ooh," was, "I'm never putting myself out there."
Yeah.
Okay, well, where's all the times you put yourself out there? Right?
Yes.
And I look at
And things
all
went well.
the my entire life, I've been putting myself out there. Now, it wasn't
Right.
just me, it was other people, other people's agenda, all that stuff. That's why I say imposter syndrome's your superpower,
Mm,
because you can see the stories that negate the decisions or fact, you made at that time. When I hung out my own coaching shingle almost 11 years ago, then is where imposter syndrome reared its ugly head because now I was putting
yeah.
myself out there.
Mm.
Yeah, playing on the skinny branches.
And the stories of rejection when it comes to self that we have
Yeah,
told ourselves.
yeah,
A lot
yeah.
to unpack there.
Lot to unpack.
So, Jen, as we're wrapping up, if there's a woman listening right now who feels invisible in her career, but she
Mm.
secretly believes that she has so much more to give, what would you tell her?
Let me just sit with that. Who feels invisible in her career, secretly feels she has so much more to give. Ask.
Hmm.
Start asking for the opportunity without
Yeah.
over
Don't just wait for
explaining.
them to come to you.
Yeah, exactly. Closed mouths don't get fed. No, ask. I just did a keynote in Florida on the power of the ask.
Hmm.
And the key pieces I see are women over explaining, apologizing,
Yes.
like taking way too long, like a word salad to get to the point. Ask for what you want, back it up with data, and tie it to the larger organizational mission so that
Yes.
the people around you understand you are thinking like an executive. Because when you start tying things to the bigger picture, people will start to take note. Just ask and start small. Start small. Start with the one that you think is going to be the easiest. Build your confidence up and then ask for something a little harder, a little harder, a little harder. All they can do is say no.
Right.
And that's the funny part is we make no mean so much. But if I said to you, Rachel, hey, I want to go see the new Devil Wears Prada 2 movie, and you're like, ugh, I hate those kind of movies. I don't want to go. All right, I'll find someone else. I'm not up all night. Why doesn't Rachel like me? Come see that
Right.
movie with me. Jeez. But we perseverate on why people say no, or we're afraid they will. And
Yes.
we've created this big convoluted story in our head. How do you know unless you ask?
Yes. That is so true. So, for everyone listening, here's what I'm taking from this conversation. First, that you don't have to whittle yourself down to fit in. Second, that our brains are powerful
Mm.
And it's so important to understand how they work so that we can use them to our advantage. And thirdly, I learned more about ovarian cancer detection, and especially what you need to do if you're having those symptoms, because there isn't just like a blood test or something you can take and let someone write you off, that you actually need a biopsy to prove that you do not have that disease. And so I'm hoping that everyone listening learn takes that lesson to heart and can share it with someone else, so that we can encourage other people to get the necessary screening when they need it. And Jen has, spent 25 years showing leaders, especially women in rooms that were not built for them, that their edges are the point. So
Mm.
if you're ready to stop playing small, I encourage you to grab both of her books, actually, but especially grab her book, Make Imposter Syndrome Your Superpower, and take her free quiz, which we'll have linked in the show notes to see if you're ready for that next move. You can also find Jen on LinkedIn or at jencoken.com. And if someone in your life needs permission to take up space, send them this episode. As always, if this conversation resonated with you, here's what you can do. Subscribe to The Purpose Profit Shift wherever you listen to podcasts. We've got episodes dropping regularly with more visionary founders and changemakers who are reshaping how business gets done. And if you found value in today's episode, leave us a rating and review. It helps other values-driven leaders find us. Until next time, keep leading with intention, scaling responsibly, and building businesses that matter. I'm Rachel Brunier Green, and this is The Purpose Profit Shift.